Mother bear breaks a leg on rocky trail. What this baby did put everyone in tears. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. Cold sweat beaded on Diana's forehead as she clutched her 18-month-old daughter Mila to her chest. The cabin walls creaked with each gust of October wind, while pine needles scratched against the windows. Her husband had been gone for 2 days, taking the only vehicle to the next town for supplies. "Mama," Mila whispered, her tiny fingers tracing Diana's jawline. The cabin felt smaller today, suffocating under gray clouds that threatened early snow. Diana walked to the window facing the mountain trail. Movement caught her eye. 2 shadows moved between the birch trees. Bears. Not ordinary ones either. A mother and her cub, larger than the black bears common to this region. The mother bear's stride seemed off. Each step forward ended with a hesitant pause. Her left foreleg trembled as she placed it down. The cub stayed close, bumping against her side when she stopped to rest. "Pretty doggies," Mila said, pressing her palms against the glass. "No, sweetheart, those are bears. Wild bears." Diana's phone showed no signal, typical for this valley. The forest ranger station lay 3 miles away, and her neighbor's cabin 5 miles. She was alone with Mila, watching creatures that could attack if threatened. The wind picked up, and Diana pulled Mila away from the window. She settled into the rocking chair by the wood stove. The bears would pass through. Everything would be fine. Nature had its own rhythm out here. But something felt wrong. Even the birds had stopped singing. 2 hours later, Diana checked the window again. The bears hadn't moved. The mother bear now sat on the trail, her injured leg stretched awkwardly. The cub circled her, making soft clicking sounds Diana had never heard before. "Mama hurt," Mila said, pointing through the glass. "Yes, baby, the mama bear is hurt." Diana's throat tightened. She knew wounded animals were unpredictable, but watching the cub nudge its mother's side broke something inside her. The way it kept looking toward the cabin with those small, dark eyes. The mother bear suddenly roared, a sound that rattled the window frames. Her eyes locked onto Diana's face through the glass. For a heartbeat, Diana felt seen, truly seen, by something wild and ancient. Mila giggled and pressed her forehead against the window. The cub tilted its head, mirroring her movement. They stayed like that for several seconds, 2 young creatures studying each other through glass and distance. "We can't go outside," Diana whispered, more to herself than Mila. But the connection lingered. Woman and bears, locked in an unspoken understanding that something would happen soon. Something that would change everything. As darkness crept across the valley, Diana realized tomorrow would bring new challenges. The mother bear's condition would worsen. The cub would grow more desperate. And Mila, with her innocent curiosity, would wake wanting to see her doggies again. That night, Diana barely slept. Every creak could be bears testing their doors. Every gust of wind sounded like approaching danger. When dawn finally broke, she rushed to the window. The bears were still there. But now the mother bear lay completely still. The cub sat beside her, its head resting on her fur, waiting for a movement that might never come. "Morning, doggies," Mila chirped, awake and energetic. Diana's heart pounded. Something terrible was unfolding outside her window, something that required impossible choices. She picked up Mila and held her tight, watching the cub's vigil. The little bear lifted its head periodically, making those clicking sounds that seemed to plead with someone, anyone, for help. "What are we going to do?" Diana whispered. The answer came when Mila slipped from her arms and toddled to the front door. Her small hands reached for the doorknob, eager to greet her new friends. Diana's breath stopped. This moment would demand everything she had. The cub noticed Mila's movement through the glass. It stood, taking one tentative step toward the cabin. The mother bear stirred slightly but couldn't lift her head. Diana scooped up Mila just as a new sound emerged. Distant howling. Wolves. They'd smelled blood. "No," Diana gasped. The forest's hierarchy would claim the injured bear. Her cub would witness it all. The howling grew louder. The cub looked terrified, pressing against its mother. The mother bear tried to growl, but only managed a weak rasp. Mila pointed excitedly. "Puppies coming!" Those weren't puppies. They were predators drawn by nature's cycle of life and death. The cabin's safety suddenly felt like a prison of conscience. Diana found herself at the threshold of an impossible decision. The door handle felt hot under her palm. Outside, the cub trembled. Inside, her own child babbled innocently about animals she didn't understand were deadly. Time seemed to stretch. The mother bear, despite her injuries, struggled to position herself between her cub and the approaching wolves. Her body, though broken, still fought to protect what she loved most. Diana recognized that stance. She'd felt it every day since Mila's birth. That fierce, primal drive to shield her child from harm. Watching the bear, she saw herself reflected in fur and fangs. The cub made eye contact with Mila again. In that moment, Diana saw past species boundaries. She saw a mother's love mirrored between wild and human, forest and cabin. "We have to do something," she whispered. But what? And at what cost? The wolves' howls echoed closer. The mother bear's breaths came ragged. The cub's clicking grew urgent. And Mila, still pointing at the window, asked a question that would haunt Diana forever. Why Mama Bear sleep outside? Because sometimes, Diana thought, mothers have to make impossible choices. Because sometimes survival demands sacrifices. Because sometimes... The first wolf appeared at the tree line, gray and lean, with yellow eyes that assessed the situation. The mother bear's growls weakened. The cub positioned itself protectively. Diana's hand reached for her rifle above the mantel. She'd sworn never to use it. Her husband kept it for peace of mind, but she'd argued against guns in a house with a toddler. Now, holding Mila with one arm and the rifle with another, she faced her first real test of motherhood. Not the sleepless nights or teething pains, not the fevers or first steps. This was about what kind of mother, what kind of person she wanted Mila to remember. The wolf took another step forward. The cub bravely stepped to meet it, despite its size. The mother bear dragged herself inches, still trying to intervene. "Brave baby bear," Mila said softly. Diana's eyes burned with tears. That cub was going to die protecting its mother. Just as she would die protecting Mila. The circle of maternal love needed no translation across species. She looked down at her daughter's trusting face. What lesson would this moment teach? That humans stay safe while nature's drama unfolds beyond their windows? That mothers sacrifice for children regardless of form or species? Or that sometimes courage meant stepping outside safety to do what's right? The cabin's warmth suddenly felt stifling. The wolves circled wider. The mother bear's strength faded. The cub stood alone against nature's hunger. Diana made her choice. She unlocked the door. "Stay inside, Mila." The cold air hit her face like a slap. The rifle felt heavy in her hands. 3 steps onto the porch brought her into full view of the wolves, the bears, and the mountain that had witnessed countless such encounters. The wolves paused, recognizing human threat. The mother bear's eyes found Diana again. The cub stepped back, as if sensing an unexpected ally. Mila appeared at the window, her small face pressed against the glass. She waved cheerfully at the animals, unaware of danger. Diana raised the rifle toward the sky and fired once. The shot echoed off the mountains, sending birds scattering and wolves retreating. The forest fell silent, except for Mila's laughing claps from inside. The mother bear made a sound Diana had never heard before, something between gratitude and recognition. The cub trotted closer, its fear replaced by curiosity. "You're welcome," Diana whispered, though they couldn't understand. But somehow they did. She lowered the rifle and studied the mother bear's injury. The leg was definitely broken, possibly infected. Without help, the bear wouldn't survive. With help? A human helping a wild bear broke every rule Diana knew. It was dangerous, illegal, irresponsible. But watching the cub return to its mother's side, nuzzling her fur with such obvious relief, Diana knew rules mattered less than moments that defined who you really were. She went back inside where Mila greeted her with glee. "You help Mama Bear?" Diana knelt to her daughter's level. Such big questions from such a small person. "I'm going to try, baby." The afternoon passed in careful observation. Diana watched the bears through binoculars while keeping Mila occupied with toys. The mother bear seemed stronger after the wolves' departure, but still couldn't stand on the injured leg. The cub ventured closer to the cabin, drawn by Mila's presence at the window. They'd developed a game. Mila would press shapes into her window, and the cub would copy the movements. Circle motions, head tilts, paw waves. "Friend bear," Mila declared. Diana smiled sadly. Friendship across species lines was beautiful, but complicated. The cub was wild, no matter how gently it interacted through glass. As sunset painted the sky orange, Diana made soup. The aroma filled the cabin, making her stomach growl. She wondered when the bears had last eaten. The mother couldn't hunt. The cub was too young. She found herself looking at the extra soup she'd made. Ridiculous thought. You couldn't just feed wild bears. It created dependency, changed natural behavior. Yet watching the cub's ribs show through its fur changed Diana's perspective on rules. Sometimes mercy mattered more than guidelines. She made another choice. Small portions of soup, cooled completely in shallow bowls placed on the porch. She retreated inside and watched through the window. The cub approached cautiously. It sniffed the offering, then sat beside it. After several minutes, it dipped its tongue into the broth. Its eyes widened with surprise at the warmth and taste. The cub carried mouthfuls back to its mother, dropping soup onto her muzzle. The mother bear's pink tongue cleaned each offering. Their tender moment broke Diana's heart and mended it simultaneously. Mila dozed against Diana's chest as twilight deepened. The bears remained, illuminated by the porch light Diana had switched on. The mother bear's breathing seemed easier. The cub curled against her side, belly full for the first time in days. A knock startled Diana awake. Through the peephole, she saw their neighbor Jim holding a flashlight. Her heart hammered. Had someone reported the bears? Was this about broken hunting laws? She secured Mila in her crib before opening the door slightly. "Diana, you all right? Heard gunshots earlier?" "I'm fine. Had to scare off some wolves." Jim's eyes moved past her to the bears on the trail. His jaw tightened. "That's the mother who's been raiding my garbage. Recognized her markings." "She's hurt, Jim. Can't even walk properly." "Should call animal control. Bears that close to cabins are dangerous." Diana stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "She has a cub. They're starving. What would you have me do?" Jim considered this. His wife had died last spring, leaving him alone. Perhaps he understood loss better than he admitted. My late wife, Sarah, always said the mountain teaches harsh lessons. Sometimes surviving means making hard choices. I fed them soup. Jim actually smiled. Sarah fed injured deer once. Vet said it was wrong. She said the heart knows things rules don't. They stood silent, watching the bears rest. The mother's breathing had indeed steadied. The cub occasionally lifted its head to check their surroundings. "What if she lives?" Diana asked. "What happens then?" Then the mountain decides. Bears heal strong, might forget human kindness, might remember it. Jim left soon after, promising to check the weather forecast. Snow threatened by weekend. Injured bears and snowstorms created dangerous combinations. Diana spent the night in the rocking chair, alternating between watching the bears and checking Mila. Her daughter slept peacefully, unaware of maternal worries that spanned species. By dawn, change arrived. The mother bear had shifted position, putting weight on 3 legs. Her injured leg dangled, but she'd moved independently for the first time. The cub woke energetic, batting at falling leaves that danced on morning wind. It approached the cabin window where Mila usually appeared. "Morning, friend," Mila called upon waking. Diana's phone buzzed, text from her husband. "Road washed out. Might take 3 more days. You and Mila, okay?" She responded. "We're managing." Unusual visitors. Another buzz came quickly. "Hope they're not bears again. Remember last fall?" Diana did remember last fall. A different bear had harassed them until her husband fired warning shots. This felt entirely different. This shared vulnerability and recognition, a connection beyond fear. By noon, significant change emerged. The mother bear stood on 3 legs, testing movement. Each step brought soft grunts, but determination won over pain. She moved toward the creek that ran behind the cabin. The cub followed excitedly, darting ahead to splash in shallow water. Mother bear's claws flexed as she attempted to hunt fish, though the broken leg hindered success. Diana found herself planning. The bears couldn't stay, but they couldn't travel far with the mother's injury. The approaching storm complicated matters. Snow would make hunting impossible for the disabled bear. She called the Forest Service, careful with details. Hypothetically, if someone encountered an injured mother bear with a cub, what should they do? The ranger laughed. Hypothetically, they should do absolutely nothing. Let nature handle it. But what if there's a cub? Won't it starve if the mother dies? Pause. "Ma'am, interfering with wildlife is illegal, dangerous too. A mother bear will protect her cub against any threat." Diana hung up, no closer to answers but clearer about the impossible choices mothers faced. Human or bear, protecting offspring meant risking everything. The afternoon brought visitors of a different kind. 3 teenagers on ATVs roared up the mountain trail, scaring wildlife and disrupting the forest's peace. They stopped near the cabin when they spotted the bears. "Awesome! Real bears!" one shouted. They revved engines, trying to chase the animals. The mother bear turned defensive, positioning herself between the machines and her cub. The cub pressed against the cabin's foundation, terrified. Diana burst outside. "Get out of here! You're scaring them!" "Old ladies protecting bears," another teenager mocked. The mother bear's growl deepened. Despite her injury, maternal rage gave her strength. She rose to full height, impressive and terrifying. The teenager's amusement turned to wariness. One tried circling behind the bear. Diana grabbed her rifle from inside. "Leave, now! I've already called the rangers." The lie worked. They sped away, leaving clouds of dust and the echo of engines. Diana stood with rifle raised until silence returned. The mother bear lowered to all fours, favoring her leg, but radiating gratitude through eyes that met Diana's directly. The cub emerged from hiding, chittering anxiously. "You're safe now," Diana said gently. Mila appeared at the window, imitating the cub's sounds perfectly. The young bear tilted its head, making the same clicks. Girl and cub engaged in conversation beyond human understanding. That evening, while Diana prepared dinner, she heard new sounds outside. Through the window, she watched the mother bear teaching her cub. Despite pain, the bear demonstrated hunting stances, paw movements, warning growls. The cub copied everything. Clumsy, eager, determined. Diana recognized maternal dedication that transcended species. Her own parenting felt inadequate in comparison. These bears survived elements, predators, injury, all while maintaining family bonds. As night fell, the mother bear settled near the cabin's corner where wind offered less bite. The cub nestled into her fur. They'd established territory that included Diana's space. Diana placed more soup outside, this time adding fish broth and chunks of leftover chicken. She watched them eat, noting the mother's improved appetite. Jim returned around 8, bringing weather reports. "Big storm tomorrow, temperature dropping fast, they'll need shelter." "I've been thinking," Diana hesitated. "My shed's empty. Added door for equipment delivery. Large enough for them." Jim studied her. "You're deep in this now. Can't have help injured wildlife. Usually ends badly. Sometimes doing right things leads to bad places. Sometimes not doing them leads worse places." He nodded slowly. "Sarah said similar things. Help or regret, those seemed our only choices." Together, they moved equipment from the shed, creating space. They wedged the door open with a log, making it inviting but not trapping. The bears watched suspiciously. The mother bear sniffed air currents coming from the shed. Her eyes studied entry and exit points. Wild creatures assessed human intentions carefully. "How do we tell them it's safe?" Diana wondered. "We don't. They decide trust." They left the shed door open, spread fresh hay inside for warmth, and retreated to Diana's cabin. Through the window, they watched the mother bear's dilemma. Shelter meant vulnerability. Exposure meant death once snow arrived. Maternal instinct battled with survival wisdom. Mila woke crying from a nightmare. Diana soothed her daughter while watching the mother bear soothe her cub with gentle tongue strokes and reassuring rumbles. "Different sounds, same love," Jim observed. Sometimes profound truths came simply. By midnight, the first fat snowflakes fell. The mother bear made her choice. Limping severely, she approached the shed. The cub followed close, copying her hesitation at the threshold. Diana held her breath. This moment would determine whether trust could bridge the divide between species. The mother bear stepped inside. Snow swirled behind her. The cub scampered after, its sounds echoing from the shelter. They stayed. Diana exhaled slowly. Tomorrow would bring the storm's full fury. Tonight, two families huddled in separate shelters, connected by an understanding that would be tested repeatedly in the hours ahead. Jim left with promises to return tomorrow. Diana triple-checked her supplies: firewood, water, food, medical kit. Mila's needs always came first, but now 2 bears depended on her choices too. As wind howled its first warnings, Diana settled into sleep with unfamiliar peace. The shed doors creaking reminded her of choices made. Howls in the distance no longer disturbed her dreams. She'd learned something essential about motherhood. It expanded to fill whatever space needed filling. It fought against natural order when love demanded. It found courage in the most unlikely places. Morning would bring challenges, the storm, the injured bear's needs, questions about long-term solutions. But tonight, Diana slept knowing she'd passed an invisible test, one that would mark the rest of her days as a mother to a human child who now understood that protection and compassion could look different than expected. The last thought before sleep claimed her. Mountains taught harsh lessons, but sometimes they also taught the most beautiful ones about who we could become when pushed beyond comfort's edge. Tomorrow would tell which lesson today's choices had taught. The wind howled relentlessly throughout the night, rattling windows and sending shivers through the cabin walls. Diana woke before dawn, her body immediately tensing as she heard unfamiliar sounds cutting through the storm's fury. Soft whimpering mixed with desperate clicking echoed from the shed. She rushed to the window, pressing her face against the frosted glass. Through the sideways blowing snow, she could barely make out shapes in the shed doorway. The cub stood halfway outside, its small body hunched against the wind, making those urgent clicking sounds Diana recognized as distress calls. "Oh no," she whispered, heart racing. Something was wrong with the mother. Before she could think through the consequences, Diana grabbed her coat and headlamp, pausing only to ensure Mila slept soundly. The snow had transformed the familiar path to the shed into an alien landscape of drifts and shadows. Each step sank deeper than expected, and the wind threatened to knock her sideways. Inside the shed, the beam of her headlamp revealed a terrifying scene. The mother bear lay completely still, her breathing shallow and rapid. The cub pressed against her side, alternating between worried clicks and gentle nudges that failed to rouse any response. "Hey, shh," Diana whispered, approaching cautiously. Despite her growing bond with these animals, she knew wounded bears remained dangerous. But maternal instinct overrode fear, as she noticed the mother bear's glazed eyes and trembling leg. The swollen limb had doubled in size overnight. Infection. Without treatment, the fever coursing through her massive body would kill her within days. Diana's nursing background kicked in automatically. She'd worked in a veterinary clinic during college. Bear anatomy wasn't her expertise, but basics remained universal. The leg needed cleaning, antibiotics, proper support. She returned to the cabin, her mind racing through improvised medical supplies. Human antibiotics wouldn't work without proper dosing. Veterinary supplies lay 3 miles away at Jim's place. His deceased wife had been the valley's unofficial animal doctor. By the time Diana gathered gauze, antiseptic, and basic pain relievers, the sky had lightened to a dull gray. The storm showed no signs of relenting. 3 feet of snow already covered the ground, with forecasts promising another foot. Back in the shed, she worked slowly beside the mother bear. The cub watched intently, its head tilted as Diana cleaned the infected wound. The mother bear's skin twitched, but she remained eerily docile. Whether from fever or instinctive understanding, Diana couldn't tell. "Your mama's very sick," Diana explained to the cub, knowing words meant nothing yet finding comfort in speaking. "I need help. Better help than I can give alone." The realization struck her forcefully. She couldn't do this alone. The mother bear needed proper veterinary care, but no vet would travel through a mountain blizzard for a wild animal. No ranger would risk their life for illegal wildlife intervention, unless... Diana's mind connected pieces rapidly. Jim's late wife Sarah had been the go-to person for injured wildlife. Jim himself maintained her old medical supplies. And somewhere in these mountains lived Marcus, a former state veterinarian who'd retired after being forced out for his controversial wildlife preservation methods. She'd heard whispers about Marcus in the general store. He lived completely off-grid, convinced that human-wildlife interaction could evolve beyond current understanding. Most people called him eccentric. Some called him crazy, but desperate times required desperate measures. Back at the cabin, Diana found Jim's number. Despite the early hour, he answered immediately. "Diana, everything okay? The mother bear, she's dying, Jim. Infection. She needs real medical help." Silence stretched. Then, "Sarah's medical kit won't be enough?" I was hoping for something else. Someone else. Marcus? Jim's sharp intake of breath spoke volumes. "Diana, he's not what people say. Sarah worked with him sometimes, but reaching him in this storm, I have to try. The cub will die without her." Another pause. "The old mining road, cabins at the end, but you'll need proper gear. ATV, GPS, emergency kit. And even then, will you watch Mila? Just for a few hours?" Jim arrived within 30 minutes, equipped with everything Diana needed. He'd also brought hot coffee and a steel determination she hadn't seen before. "I'm coming with you," he stated. No room for argument. "Sarah would haunt me forever if I let you do this alone." The preparation for their journey took another hour. Mila remained asleep, safe under Jim's watchful eye. Diana's stomach churned as she kissed her daughter's forehead, whispering promises of return. The old mining road hadn't been used in decades. Their ATVs struggled through accumulating snow, headlights barely penetrating the white curtain. Diana's hands cramped on the handlebars, her body numb from cold despite layers of clothing. After an hour of treacherous progress, Jim signaled a stop. Ahead, a massive pine tree had fallen across the trail. Snow buried it deep enough to make passing impossible. "We continue on foot," Jim shouted over the wind. "Quarter mile, maybe. Stay close." The final stretch tested everything Diana had. Each step forward required incredible effort. Snow filled her boots despite waterproofing. Ice crystals cut her exposed face, but thoughts of the mother bear's labored breathing pushed her forward. Marcus's cabin appeared suddenly, like materialization from a fairy tale, set into the mountainside, nearly invisible beneath snow and vines. Smoke rose from a chimney, suggesting life within. Jim pounded on the door. "Marcus, it's Jim Morrison. Emergency." The door opened slowly, revealing a man who could have stepped from another century. Wild beard, intense eyes, clothing that belonged in frontier museums. But his hands moved with precise care as he adjusted his glasses. "Jim Morrison, last time I saw you was Sarah's funeral. Come in before you freeze." Inside, the cabin defied expectations. Medical texts lined sturdy shelves. An examination table occupied one corner. Microscopes and instruments filled workbenches. This wasn't a hermit's lair but a wilderness laboratory. "We need help," Diana started, then stopped. How to explain befriending wild bears to someone who might understand, or might report her to authorities? Marcus studied her face carefully. "You're the woman staying in Riverside Cabin. I've watched your interactions with the injured bear through my scope. Remarkable bond, considering the circumstances." Relief and shock mixed in Diana's expression. "You've been watching? The valley tells many stories. Yours intrigued me. A mother recognizing motherhood across species lines." He turned to his shelves, pulling down bags and bottles. Oxytetracycline for the infection. Ketamine for sedation during treatment. Anti-inflammatories for the swelling. "You'll help?" "I'll help, but understand. Success rates for compound fractures in wild bears hover around 30%, even with proper care." His eyes flickered with past tragedies. "I've seen many mothers fight for their cubs. The mountain doesn't guarantee happy endings. Within 10 minutes, they'd repacked supplies and prepared for the return journey. Marcus insisted on accompanying them, bringing equipment Diana couldn't have named. His physical stamina surprised her. This isolated researcher moved through snow with practiced grace. "Why did you leave state service?" Diana asked during a brief rest. The question had burned since entering his cabin. "I believed animals deserved better than current protocols allowed. A bear caught raiding human property gets one chance: relocation. Second offense means destruction. I refused to implement that policy for a mother protecting her cubs." His voice carried bitter memories. "The state disagreed with my flexibility." By the time they reached Diana's property, the storm had reached dangerous levels. Wind speeds made standing difficult. Snow fell horizontally, creating whiteout conditions. Inside the shed, the mother bear's condition had deteriorated further. Her breathing rasped with troubling wetness. The cub had stopped clicking, instead sitting silent vigil beside her cooling body. Marcus worked with surprising speed. He administered sedatives through multiple injection sites, calculated by the bear's estimated weight. While Diana held the flashlight steady, he inserted an IV line with movements that spoke of extensive practice. "Remarkable," he muttered, examining the fracture. "She's moved far with this injury. Most would have given up." "What are her chances?" Diana asked, though dreading the answer. "Honestly, 20%. The infection's systemic, but," he glanced at the cub, "I've seen mother bears accomplish the impossible." For the next 6 hours, they maintained vigil. The combination of sedatives and pain medication kept the mother bear unconscious while antibiotics battled the infection. Marcus taught Diana to monitor vital signs, adjust IV flow, and recognize danger indicators. The cub refused to leave its mother's side. Its small body pressed tight against the massive bear's fur, finding warmth and comfort despite the scary human activities. Occasionally, it would lift its head to study Marcus and Diana before settling back down with soft whimpers. "Tell me about your first contact," Marcus said during one waiting period. His clinical interest seemed genuine, without judgment. Diana recounted everything: the initial sighting, the mutual recognition, the wolves, the teenage hunters, the impossible decisions. Marcus nodded throughout, occasionally jotting notes in a weathered journal. "Imprinting can occur across species barriers," he explained, "particularly with intelligent animals experiencing trauma. The mother bear likely recognized both threat and protection potential in you. Your child created additional neural pathways for trust, one mother acknowledging another." The scientific explanation felt inadequate for what Diana had experienced. Raw connection transcended biology textbooks, but sharing her story with someone who didn't dismiss it as fantasy brought unexpected relief. "What happens if she survives?" Diana asked as morning light began filtering through the storm clouds. "Wild bears rarely remain in proximity to humans after recovery. Instinct usually reasserts, but," Marcus considered carefully, "documented cases exist of bears maintaining awareness of human benefactors, not domestication, recognition." The mother bear stirred as afternoon approached. Her massive head lifted slightly, eyes more focused than before. The cub immediately nuzzled her face, its clicking replaced by happy chirps. Marcus checked vitals again, allowing a small smile. "Temperature's dropping, lungs clearing. She's fighting the infection." Relief flooded Diana's exhausted body. Around them, the storm had finally begun to weaken. Snow still fell, but vertically now. Wind had gentled to occasional gusts. "We should let her wake up naturally," Marcus advised. monitor from distance. Wild animals need space for dignity during recovery. They retreated to Diana's cabin where coffee and sandwiches waited. Jim had managed Mila perfectly. The toddler had barely noticed her mother's absence, occupied with new picture books and toys. "Bear, wake up?" Mila asked, remembering her window friends. "Yes, baby, Mama Bear is getting better." "Good." Mila returned to her toys, accepting the information with toddler efficiency. Marcus stayed, observing from the cabin window as the mother bear gradually emerged from sedation. She tested her injured leg cautiously, finding it still painful but functional. The splint Marcus had created held firm. "She'll need daily medication for 2 weeks," he said, preparing doses in labeled containers. "If she accepts you close enough for feeding, mix the antibiotics in her food. If not—" He shrugged. "The mountain takes back its own." By evening, the mother bear had moved to the shed's entrance. She gazed out at the transformed landscape. Everything buried under white. Her breathing remained labored but steady. The cub stayed pressed to her side, occasionally venturing short distances before hurrying back. "I should return to my cabin," Marcus said, gathering his equipment. "The roads will be impassable for days, but radio me daily." He handed Diana a 2-way radio, old but clearly maintained. Channel 7, same frequency the park rangers use for emergencies. Before leaving, he touched Diana's arm gently. "What you did requires courage most people never find. Whether she lives or dies, you've proven something important about our capacity for cross-species compassion." After Marcus disappeared into the twilight, Diana finally allowed exhaustion to hit. She collapsed into bed beside Mila, every muscle screaming protest. But sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of bears and mountains, of choices made and consequences unknown. The next morning brought crystal clarity, one of those perfect post-storm days where everything sparkled. Diana checked the shed immediately. The mother bear had moved during the night, settling near the cabin's foundation where sun struck early. The cub played nearby, practicing hunting pounces on snow-covered pine cones. When Diana appeared with breakfast, both bears looked up with an awareness she hadn't seen before. Not domestication, not wildness either. Something new, difficult to define. She placed the medicated food carefully, stepping back to witness their approach. The mother bear moved with obvious difficulty but determination. The cub followed its lead, waiting patiently for permission to eat. "Good morning," Diana whispered, knowing words still meant nothing but finding comfort in the ritual. The mother bear met her eyes directly. In that gaze, Diana read volumes. Gratitude, yes, but also wariness. Trust earned through crisis didn't guarantee future interaction. This animal remained wild, powerful, potentially dangerous. But for this moment, they shared space peacefully. Two mothers, different species, united by a force older than language. Mila pressed her face against the window, babbling excited observations. The cub heard her voice and lifted its head, those dark eyes finding the toddler's bright ones. They held the connection for several heartbeats before the cub returned to eating. Diana spent the morning establishing new routines. Medication hidden in fresh meat, clean water provided twice daily, monitoring the mother bear's movement and bathroom habits, indicators of recovery progress. By noon, her husband's truck appeared on the main road. Relief mixed with anxiety as Diana considered explaining the situation. How would he react to finding his wife nursing wild bears in their shed? But as Patrick climbed from his vehicle, Diana saw his face change from concern to amazement. Through the cabin's large windows, he'd spotted the bears. "Diana, what in the world? It's a long story," she began, then noticed his expression soften as the cub approached the window, mimicking Mila's wave. "Tell me everything," he said quietly, sinking into a chair without removing his coat. Over hot soup, Diana shared the entire narrative. Patrick listened without interruption, his face cycling through disbelief, worry, wonder, and finally acceptance. "So, you've become a wilderness doctor?" "I had help, Marcus especially, but—" She searched for words. "Once you see them up close, see the mother fighting for her cub, the cub's trust, you can't just walk away." Patrick nodded slowly. "I've heard stories about Marcus. People say he's got more sense with animals than humans. Most people haven't met a situation like this. Most people would call wildlife control. I know." Patrick stood, moving to the window. The mother bear laid on her side, the cub curled in the curve of her massive body. Afternoon sun painted their fur with golden highlights. "We can't keep them," he said finally. "I understand what you did, why you did it. But they're wild animals, Diana. This can't be permanent. I know that, too. Marcus said the same thing, but for now, we see this through." Patrick surprised her by reaching for her hand. "But we need to think about exit strategies, for them and for us." That afternoon, while Mila napped, they discussed plans. Patrick would contact his cousin who worked with wildlife rehabilitation in Colorado. Maybe legal channels existed for their unusual situation. Diana would continue the medical care under Marcus's guidance. Together, they'd determine if, the mother bear recovered enough for release. The cub's curiosity brought lighter moments. It had discovered sliding on ice patches near the cabin. Its clumsy attempts at skating made Mila giggle with delight. The mother bear watched indulgently, occasionally growling warnings when the cub ventured too far. These ordinary interactions masked the extraordinary nature of their situation. For 3 days, life developed an unusual rhythm. Feeding bears became as routine as feeding chickens once was. The local ecosystem adapted to the presence of predators near human habitation. Then came the first challenge to their fragile peace. On the 4th morning, tracks in the fresh snow revealed visitors during the night. Large tracks, larger than the mother bears. Male black bear tracks circled the cabin twice before continuing toward the high country. Territory dispute, Patrick identified immediately. A male checking out the newcomers. Diana's stomach tensed. Wild bears had complex social structures. An injured female with a cub wouldn't fare well against a healthy male seeking dominance. The mother bear acted differently that morning. Her fur prickled constantly. Low growls rumbled whenever she faced the forest. The cub pressed closer than usual, sensing its mother's agitation. "We need to talk to Marcus," Diana decided. The radio crackled when she adjusted frequency. "Marcus, this is Diana. We have a situation." "Static, then. Go ahead, Diana." "Hearing you clear." She explained the tracks, the mother bear's obvious stress. Marcus's response came quickly. Nature's challenge arrived earlier than expected. The injured female presents easy prey in another bear's territory. You might need to make difficult decisions soon. What kind of decisions? Whether human intervention has reached its ethical limit. The question haunted Diana throughout the day. Had she overstepped boundaries already? Were her actions preserving life or merely prolonging inevitable death? The mother bear's progress encouraged optimism, but wild nature rarely respected human hopes. That night, howls echoed through the valley, multiple wolves responding to the scent of bear activity. The mother bear answered with roars that shook snow from nearby trees. Her injured leg couldn't sustain a fight, but maternal rage compensated for physical weakness. The cub stayed pressed against the cabin wall. Through the window, its eyes sought Mila's, finding comfort in the toddler's presence. Mila sang softly, one of her made-up songs about friendly animals and warm beds. The harmony between child and cub created a bubble of peace within the larger chaos. Diana wondered if this moment represented humanity at its best. Innocence reaching across species to offer comfort during fear. Storm clouds built again as evening deepened. Weather reports threatened another blizzard within days. Patrick reinforced the shed's roof, checking for weaknesses that might collapse under additional snow weight. "We can't sustain this indefinitely," he said, while securing supports. "Another big storm might trap us completely. No medical access for Mila if she gets sick. No escape route if the bear's situation turns dangerous." Diana knew he was right. Their isolation worked against them the longer this situation continued. Mountain winters tested even prepared families. Adding wild bear complications pushed their resources thin. "One more week," she proposed. "If the mother bear continues improving, we'll contact authorities. Find official solutions." Patrick accepted this timeline, though worry remained in his eyes. They both understood that emotional attachments complicated rational decisions. The cub's trust, the mother bear's gratitude. These bonds challenged basic safety protocols. The next 2 days passed peacefully. The mother bear's appetite increased. Her movement improved daily. She began venturing further from the shed, testing her strength with short walks along cleared paths. The cub gained confidence correspondingly. It explored the property boundaries, always returning to check its mother's location. Sometimes it would pause near the cabin windows, studying the human activity inside. Mila's fascination never diminished. She drew pictures of bears constantly, narrating elaborate stories about her friend bears to anyone who listened. Her vocabulary expanded to include bear words, her interpretation of the various sounds she heard. "Mama bear, say hello," Mila would announce, pointing out the window. And remarkably, the mother bear often acknowledged her with a gentle huff that could be interpreted as greeting. Patrick documented everything meticulously: photos, written observations, audio recordings. "If this goes sideways," he explained, "we'll need proof we acted responsibly. If it goes right, we'll have an incredible story." Marcus visited on the 5th day, snowshoeing through improving but still challenging conditions. His examination of the mother bear revealed significant progress. "Remarkable recovery rate," he admitted, carefully palpating the healing leg. "She's adapted to weight distribution. The infection's cleared. Wild bears have stronger immune systems than we calculate. So she might survive long-term," Diana asked hopefully. "Survive, yes. Thrive returns to her original territory unlikely. She'll need to establish new range. Find balance between human proximity and wilderness." They discussed relocation options. Marcus knew researchers studying bear behavior who might accept this unusual case. Colorado authorities sometimes facilitated extraordinary situations when properly documented. "The cub presents a different challenge," Marcus noted. "It's bonded to you through this crisis. That bond could complicate its reintegration with wild behavior patterns." Diana watched the cub playing with pine cones, its movements incorporating games it had learned watching Mila through the window. The hybridization of wild and domestic behaviors worried her. Had her intervention harmed the cub's future survival capabilities? "We need to start distancing," she admitted reluctantly. "Gradually reduce contact, encourage natural behaviors." The process proved harder than anticipated. The mother bear accepted distance easily, her recovery reducing dependency on human assistance. But the cub resisted separation. It lingered near the cabin, drawn by familiar sounds and movements. Mila struggled most of all. Her friend bears had become central to her daily routine. When Diana enforced window barriers to block visual contact, Mila's wails echoed through the cabin. "It's better this way," Diana soothed, holding her crying daughter. But her own heart cracked with each separation. On the 8th day, nature intervened dramatically. The predicted storm arrived with unprecedented fury. Lightning split the pre-dawn sky despite the season. Thunder rolled endlessly off mountain peaks. Snow turned to freezing rain, then back to snow, creating treacherous ice layers. The mother bear made a remarkable decision. She approached the cabin door directly, butting it gently with her massive head. When Diana appeared, the bear looked directly at her, then at the intensifying storm, then back at Diana. "She wants inside?" Patrick asked incredulously, joining Diana at the door. The bear's intention seemed clear: shelter from the unprecedented storm, but allowing a wild bear inside their home crossed every boundary Diana had established. "We can't," Patrick said, reading her thoughts. "Mila's safety comes first. Always." The bear waited patiently, understanding human hesitation. Her cub pressed close, equally soaked and miserable. The rain had penetrated their thick fur, exposing them to dangerous exposure risk. Diana's mind raced through options. The shed offered inadequate protection from this particular storm. The cabin represented their only viable shelter, but housing wild bears indoors. Lightning struck nearby, illuminating the scene with ghostly clarity. The mother bear's eyes held unusual intelligence, not just instinct, but conscious decision-making. She knew the risks, but chose human mercy over pride. Patrick broke the stalemate. "We'll set up the back room, block it off with furniture. They get shelter, we maintain separation." Within 20 minutes, they'd transformed the storage room into a makeshift den. Old blankets created bedding. A space heater provided gentle warmth. Most importantly, a heavy tool chest blocked the connecting doorway, ensuring bears stayed contained. The mother bear entered cautiously, sniffing every corner. The cub followed eagerly, relieved to escape the storm. They settled onto blankets, shaking water from their fur. Mila watched through the gap, fascinated beyond measure. "Bears inside? Just for the storm, baby. They need help just like we helped before." That night tested everyone's limits. The storm raged with unusual violence. Trees crashed outside. Power flickered repeatedly. Ice built on windows, distorting the outside world into abstract patterns. Inside, an uneasy calm prevailed. The bears slept fitfully, unused to confinement. The cub whined occasionally, homesick for open spaces. The mother bear's breathing still challenged her, though significantly improved. The human family adapted poorly to indoor wildlife. Every sound triggered hypervigilance. The bear's presence dominated thoughts and conversations. Never had Diana been more aware of the thin line between civilization and wilderness. Morning brought shocking revelations. The storm had decimated the valley. Massive trees blocked roads completely. Power lines hung in dangerous tangles. The outside world had disconnected entirely. More troubling, radio contact with Marcus yielded only static. Whether equipment failure or worse weather damage affected communication remained unknown. "We're on our own," Patrick stated flatly, assessing damage through windows. "Could be days before anyone reaches us." The isolation created new dynamics. With immediate medical support gone, the bear's continued presence felt more precarious. The mother bear had recovered enough to challenge anything threatening her cub, including humans if circumstances triggered her instincts. "We need contingency plans," Patrick continued. If she turns aggressive, if the cub gets hurt, if infection returns without antibiotics available. But contingency planning proved academic. The bears had adopted their own solutions. That afternoon, the mother bear nosed open the back door Diana had left unfastened. She stepped outside despite the continuing storm, surveying damage with careful assessment. The cub followed hesitantly. Together, they explored the transformed landscape. Fallen trees created new obstacles and opportunities. Ice-covered branches provided different textural experiences. The storm had rewritten familiar territory into something both challenging and exciting. Diana watched from the kitchen window as bears adapted to changed conditions. The mother favored her healing leg but moved with increasing confidence. The cub bounded between ice patches and snowdrifts, practicing balance without fear of failure. "They're reclaiming their wildness," she whispered to Patrick. "It's time," he agreed. That realization carried weight beyond simple acknowledgement. Despite their connection, despite mutual life-saving actions, the bears belonged to wilderness, not human domestic space. Their recovery meant their departure. The following days brought gradual separation. Diana still provided medicated food, but at increasing distances. The bears spent more time exploring their expanding territory, less time near the cabin. Even the cub's window visits decreased as natural curiosity reasserted itself. Mila sensed the changing dynamic. Her drawings showed bears in forests now, not beside houses. Her stories evolved from close friendships to respectful distance. "Bears go forest," she explained one morning, pointing out the window. "Yes, baby, bears need forest. We helped. Now they're strong again." The final parting approached unexpectedly. On the 10th day of their association, Diana woke to find bear tracks leading away from the property. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, preserving the journey's beginning but not its destination. The mother bear had departed with her cub sometime during darkness. No farewell, no backward glance. Simply a quiet exit into the wilderness that had always been their true home. Diana stood at the window for hours, searching tree lines for movement. But the forest kept its secrets. The bears had merged seamlessly back into wild rhythms. "They left us," she murmured to Patrick when he found her. "They went home," he corrected gently. "We were their temporary sanctuary. That chapter's closed." Processing the bear's departure affected each family member differently. Patrick started immediate cleanup, removing bear evidence from the shed and yard. Mila continued drawing bears, but now added children to the pictures, her way of processing separation. Diana found herself listening for sounds that no longer came. 3 days later, radio contact with Marcus finally connected. "Diana, this is Marcus. Are you receiving?" "Marcus, the bears are gone. They left." Static crackled. Expected outcome. The mother's recovery allowed natural instinct to dominate. "Where did they head?" "Northeast, I think, toward higher country." "Good. That valley contains less human presence. Better territory for recovery." "Will they be okay? The mother's leg?" "Wild bears are remarkably adaptable. She'll favor the leg permanently, but it won't impair survival. The cub received invaluable maternal training during this crisis." Relief mixed with lingering sadness as Diana signed off. Their extraordinary experience had concluded as naturally as it began. The mountain had provided lessons about mercy, boundaries, and the delicate balance between human and wild. Patrick's cousin called that afternoon with updates about official channels. Their documentation could be submitted to wildlife authorities as a case study. Precedent might be established for future human bear medical interventions. "But most importantly," the cousin stressed, "you survived without injury. That's the real success story." Diana agreed intellectually. Emotionally, she carried something more complex. The mother bear's trust, earned through crisis, had gifted her with insights about courage she couldn't have found elsewhere. Watching Mila interact fearlessly with dangerous animals taught lessons about innate compassion that transcended species. Life gradually normalized over following weeks. Snow melted slowly, revealing a landscape forever changed by winter's fury. Diana resumed her editing work, though found herself working near the window where bear watching had occurred. Sometimes, usually at dawn or dusk, she thought she spotted movement in distant trees, large shapes moving with particular rhythms. But certainty eluded her. Perhaps imagination filled spaces reality had emptied. Mila's development reflected their shared experience profoundly. Her language skills accelerated, including invented bear words for concepts like protection, healing, and family. Her imaginative play incorporated rescue scenarios and healing narratives. "Mama Bear, okay now?" Mila asked repeatedly. "Mama Bear is strong and takes care of her baby in the forest," Diana reassured. The answer satisfied Mila's 2-year-old concerns. For Diana, satisfaction proved more elusive. She carried questions about wildlife intervention, human responsibility, and the price of crossing boundaries designed by both evolution and law. 2 months after the bear's departure, unusual visitors proved Diana's actions hadn't gone unnoticed. A state wildlife officer arrived with paperwork and warnings. Someone had reported the bear situation, likely the teenagers on ATVs. "Ma'am, interfering with wildlife carries serious penalties," the officer explained, reviewing notes. "However, given your husband's documentation and Mr. Marcus's testimony about medical necessity, we're prepared to file this as exceptional circumstances." But Diana sensed additional expectations. But future incidents must be reported immediately. No independent medical intervention. These situations require professional oversight. Diana accepted the warning gracefully, knowing she'd acted according to conscience during crisis. The officer's subsequent comments surprised her further. "I reviewed your photographs extensively. The bond between your daughter and that cub, remarkable documentation. We've never seen such peaceful interspecies interaction during medical recovery. Mila doesn't understand danger the way adults do. Maybe children understand connection possibilities adults have forgotten." The conversation lingered as spring crept into the valley. Flowers pushed through lingering snow. Birds returned from southern migrations. The forest awakened with familiar rhythms, though marked by winter's dramatic changes. Diana started a private journal documenting their experience. Not for publication, that felt exploitative, but for personal processing of extraordinary events that defied simple categorization. Patrick built an observation blind near the creek where bears often fished. Not for photographing their specific bears, but to monitor general wildlife activity now that their eyes had been opened to mountain dynamics. The blind caught glimpses of complexity Diana had missed before. Coyotes trailing injured prey, birds adapting to storm-altered habitats. The endless cycle of predator and prey, life and death, that sustained wilderness balance. Occasionally, other bears passed through their property. Never as close as that winter pair. Never with the same desperate need. But Diana now recognized each animal's individual characteristics, movement patterns, fear responses, territorial behaviors. "We're different people now," Patrick observed one evening while watching sunset paint the peaks orange. "That bear taught us something about our place here." What's our place? Temporary, respectful, helpful when asked, but not assuming we know what's best for wild things. The autumn brought indirect news from Marcus via radio communication. Research cameras placed throughout the valley had captured footage of a female black bear with a distinctive gait pattern, accompanied by a healthy yearling. The leg healed with a characteristic hitch, Marcus reported. But she's established territory successfully. The yearling shows no signs of domestication. They're okay? Diana needed confirmation. More than okay, thriving. Your intervention preserved life without compromising wilderness adaptation. That night, Diana dreamed of bears for the first time in months. Not the cabin bears she'd known, but wild figures moving through pristine forests. In the dream, the mother bear paused, looking directly at her with those intelligent eyes. No gratitude, no recognition. Simply acknowledgement of past intersection before continuing the endless dance of survival. She woke understanding profoundly. Their connection had been real but temporary. A crisis had bridged two worlds briefly. Healing had allowed natural order to reassert. The following winter brought deep snows but no emergencies. Diana had installed storm shutters and improved insulation. Wildlife passed through without desperate encounters, but something had awakened in their family, a deeper awareness of their interconnection with mountain life. Mila, now 3, corrected adults who failed to notice wildlife signs. Patrick identified tree varieties and read weather patterns with new proficiency. Diana understood plant cycles and animal behaviors beyond anything taught in books. Their cabin remained on wilderness edges, neither fully wild nor completely civilized. They'd found balance the bears had taught unconsciously, protection when needed, distance when required, respect always. On quiet mornings, Diana sometimes sat at the kitchen window with her coffee. The view encompassed trees where bears might den, creeks where cubs might learn hunting, trails where mothers taught survival. She never saw their bears again. The forest kept that privacy sacred. But awareness lived on, that somewhere in this vast wilderness, a black bear with a hitched gait raised cubs who might someday face their own crises. Would humans respond with fear or understanding? Guns or medicine? Barriers or bridges? Those questions mattered less than the certainty Diana carried now. When faced with suffering, even across species lines, compassion remained the truest response. Laws could inform but not dictate the heart's immediate knowing. In moments of crisis, mothers recognized mothers, regardless of form. The mountain taught harsh lessons indeed, but sometimes, in the space between heartbeats, it whispered softer truths about connection possible when fear surrendered to love. 3 years after their winter of bears, Mila asked while drawing forest scenes, "Mama, do bears remember us?" Diana considered carefully before responding. Bears remember many things: dangers, food sources, safe places. Whether they remember people who helped, that's their secret. I remember them. What do you remember most? Mila's small face scrunched in concentration. Baby bear scared, Mama Diana not scared. Mama bear got better. Love helped. Yes, Diana thought, love helped. That truth transcended every boundary nature had established. In one remarkable winter, fear had transformed into understanding, distance into connection, and strangers into unlikely allies who shared a moment of profound grace. The mountain kept its secrets still, but some lessons once learned resonate forever in the hearts that lived them. Diana understood now that courage meant more than absence of fear. It meant choosing compassion when instinct counseled caution. It meant recognizing the divine spark in eyes completely unlike our own. She pulled Mila close, watching her daughter color bears with careful precision. Each line represented memory. Each color choice spoke to understanding beyond her years. The winter bears had given them a gift more precious than survival. They'd shown how love could bridge any divide when hearts remained open to possibility. Through the kitchen window, the forest stood eternal. Somewhere among those trees, life continued its dance of predator and prey, of birth and death, of seasons turning with indifferent beauty. But for one family, the wilderness carried an extra meaning now. A place where miracles happened, and mothers from different worlds recognized their shared calling. Spring would come again. Summer's abundance would fade to autumn's preparation. Winter's challenges would test every creature's resilience. But in one remote cabin, 3 humans would face each season knowing they'd proven something extraordinary. Love truly could conquer fear. And in the right moment, between one heartbeat and the next, every boundary could dissolve into connection as pure and strong as mountain rivers. The winter bears had taught them well, and the mountain, ancient and wise, had witnessed another chapter in the endless story of compassion's triumph over fear.